Hi, readers. How are you? I hope you're well. I wanted to come back today to talk about my next quarter's nonfiction read picked by you. I have read a couple of nonfiction reads this first quarter, and you did pick one for me, and I am about to film a video reviewing said nonfiction read. And I am anticipating what I will be reading in the next quarter. I would like for you to weigh in on choosing one of these four possibilities for me to read in the April through June quarter of the year. They have been on my shelf, some longer than others. And let's start with the oldest one, I think. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to share with you four nonfiction reads that I would like to get to. And I would like you to pick one that I will absolutely, certainly get to in the next quarter. Then the others I may or may not get to, but this will be your reader's choice for me. Okay? All right, the first one I am ashamed to admit I've had for a while and I have not gotten to. This was a gift from a friend of mine whose name is Heidi. Hi, Heidi. And she got me this a few years ago when she saw this author at a book chat talk in her community. And this is The Story of a Curse, The Chicago Cubs by Rich Cohen. She even had him inscribe it for me and sent me a bookmark from the location, which was in Ridgefield, Connecticut, Books on the Common. I love this little bookmark. I don't know if that gives it any extra points, but if you followed me or you know me in real life for any length of time, you know that I was raised in Chicago and I am a diehard Chicago Cubs fan. March 30th is opening day for the Cubs. They are in spring training now, but I grew up loving the Cubs. Even though I was on the wrong side of town to be rooting for the Cubs. I rooted for the Cubs because my daddy rooted for the Cubs, and that's how that worked. But this does talk about what is called the curse, which involves a goat, if you're not familiar. So a man brought his goat to the field in 1945 for the World Series, and it was an amazingly crazy thing to do. And the curse was said to have happened because this man brought this goat onto the field. It's a very long story, but I think this book is about more than just the goat. I think it is about their history. It is about some of the things that have happened to them. It is, was it about the goat? Was it really a curse? Was it just that they just didn't win? But the reason Heidi and I bonded over this, among other things, is because we were at a scrapbooking retreat together the year that the Cubs made it through to the World Series and then subsequently won the World Series. So we were both Cubs fans. She's not from Chicago, but that's okay. People are Cubs fans all around the world. They don't have to live there to have become a Cubs fan, but this is everything. And why haven't I gotten to it? No idea. So if you're going to root for the Cubs and the breaking of the curse, this would be the one to choose, I guess. The next one is Monster, She Wrote, The Women Who Pioneered Horror and Speculative Fiction by Lisa Kroger and Melanie R. Anderson. I had the privilege and pleasure of listening to them at a book chat at my local library some time ago. They both did indeed sign this copy. Look, they even used the right color pen. And I love the end papers and the cover of these books. They're just so wonderfully done. I don't think that they did the art. They did not. This is dedicated to all the girls who still sleep with the lights on, but read the scary stories anyway. That's me. So they do a little piece, a couple of pages on each author, on the founding mothers, the women who wrote the pulps. That's just a few that are in here. And Haunting the Home is one of them. So they talk about Mary Shelley, they talk about Daphne du Maurier, Shirley Jackson, Susan Hill, some of the classics, and then they go into the more recent writers of horror and speculative fiction, like Sarah Waters, whom I love, as well as V.C. Andrews, Anne Rice, and Toni Morrison even wrote a piece they write about Toni Morrison. I don't know that there's anything not to love about this. I also don't know why I haven't picked it up sooner than now. But if this one catches your eye, I would be happy to read it. I really, really enjoy they have little quotes inside. And again, these are not deep dives into each author, but just little vignettes about each one. And just so you get a taste if you haven't read them, and then you're just kind of reminded about the ones that you do. They give you a reading list at the end of each chapter. Let's see, this is Edith Wharton, for example. So you listen about Edith Wharton, and then you have a quote, and then you also have an also try, or an sort of an if you liked Edith, then you might like this at the end of each piece. And the reading list of this particular writer, if this writer is new to you. I think we all need this. Those of us who love horror all need this. And I'm happy to feature it here because I don't know if it's that well known, but I'd be happy if you pick this one for sure. I mean, you can see how you just can't go wrong here, right? So the oldest one on my shelf that I haven't read is the Cubs book. The next oldest one on my shelf that I haven't read is the library book by Susan Orlean. She wrote The Orchid Thief as well as a number of other books. She's a fairly popular nonfiction writer, and I picked this up years ago on a trip we made to Oxford, Mississippi, and so I got it from Square Books, which is one of my favorite booksellers in the state that I live in for sure, if not in the whole of the US. It's fantastic, and they have a number of branches. But the library book is the story of a fire in 1986 that broke out in the Los Angeles Public Library. 1986 is the year after my son was born, so I have to admit I have no memory of a fire breaking out in the Los Angeles Public Library. But by the time it was extinguished, the fire had destroyed or damaged more than 1 million books, which, had I known at that time, had I not had new mom brain, would have been devastating. Devastating. It's a national treasure, according to the Washington Post. Compelling book that tells the broader story of libraries and librarians in a way that's never been done before. Talks about why libraries are more than books, which I think is important because they are. Deckled Edge novel, or Deckled Edge book, which I love. I love this end cover with the old-fashioned library book, or library card, which existed for a long time in my libraries, probably in yours too. But as a person of a certain age, I grew up with library cards. So yeah, I'd be happy to read this one too. It's been on my backlist for quite some time. And like I said, Susan Orlean writes a lot of nonfiction, and she's pretty popular. And this is a great nonfiction read for a book lover. Can't imagine what would be better. Can you? And if I go back to the sad place, which, the fire is sad and the Cubs curse is sad, but I feel like this one is going to be heavy, but I also do want to get to it. So I got this for my partner because she's a big fan of this series, although I am too. We're both big fans. There's no question. Our niece is a big fan. We're all big fans of this series, but this one is Matthew Perry's memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. The reason this is sad, there's two reasons why this is sad. One is it talks about his sinking into alcoholism and drug addiction while he was on the set of Friends. And maybe even before that, I don't know. I haven't really listened to a lot of information about this. And my partner is not someone who chats about books after reading them. In fact, that's exactly not what she wants to do. So I have to respect that. This, though, I have heard has some mixed reviews, and it was highly anticipated, and some people were somewhat disappointed. But it talks about his life from childhood into his sobriety, his current sobriety. It talks about his experience with almost dying. There are, of course, photos of him and his parents in here. His mom actually worked for the Prime Minister of Canada. And his dad, I think, was also an actor or a journalist or something in that. I mean, he had some sort of fame of his own, as I recall. But, and I think his parents divorced. There have been a lot of reviews about it. And again, some of them are not great. But I am invested enough in his life and in that series and in wanting to know about his life that I would be pleased to read this too. So I have no judgment about any of these 4 books that I have suggested to you to choose one of for me. And so if you will vote in the next week or so, I guess we'll close this in about a week, then I'll have plenty of time to get started. And again, I will read at least one of these in the next quarter, which is April, May, and June. So The Chicago Cubs, Story of a Curse by Rich Cohen. Monster, She Wrote, The Women Who Pioneered Horror and Speculative Fiction. I almost hit myself with it, by Lisa Kroger and Melanie R. Anderson. Library Book by Susan Orlean and The Fire at the LA Public Library, and the memoir of Matthew Perry, who played Chandler on Friends, and his experience with acting and drug abuse and almost dying and recovery. Okay, that's the choices. So weigh in the comments below, and I will come back with a video in the next couple of weeks letting you know which one you picked, and then I will get going on that read. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you weighing in on this and making a decision for me when I am in gridlock about being able to do that for myself. It's just fun sometimes to have somebody else pick my read, so that's why I do it. Talk soon. If you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to do that. And as always, happy reading. Bye.